and summarize.
Welcome to the Humanities and Social Sciences Literature Review Workshop. My name is Erin Durham-Wright. I use she, her pronouns. I am one of the reference and instruction librarians here, and I work specifically with the Cass College. So I work with the language departments, the music, dance, theater, history, and so this will be kind of research from those areas. I wanted to thank many people who have contributed to the slides and their ideas as well as we go through. I will be sharing out the recording, the slides, and the resources from today's workshop later this week. And just to know that this is currently being recorded, I'll be sharing that out. If you're in, there's several of you in WebEx, and sometimes the screen can get really small. So just note in your WebEx browser option or a platform option, there's some zoom buttons. You can zoom in and out. That might help with the slide readability potentially, depending on how your view is. And then feel free to put any questions in the chat. I have those up, I can see those. Or you can also put them, of course, you can ask questions in person if you're here in person. So that would be great. All right. Yeah, and my background is in, I have a degree in library science and then history and music. I have a master's degree. So broadly interdisciplinary. I mean, library studies are very interdisciplinary. But that's a little bit of my background. And then just so you know, there is a librarian that serves each of the major departments, the majors, the programs of study here at UMBC. And that link takes you to a list by discipline. And you can see our names, the ways to contact us, and schedule an appointment. So we have an appointment calendar. This is a quick and easy way to see our schedule and make an appointment to meet either here at the library or online. We do, most of us meet both ways. So I would love to hear what programs and studies, disciplines, if you have a specific program or department you're in, feel free to share that in the chat, or I'd love to hear if you're willing to share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm social work major and a music minor. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Very interdisciplinary. Awesome. Fantastic. Well, welcome. And I'll just wait a minute or so if anyone wants to share in the chat. It's just helpful for me to keep in mind what your research area it might be.
What's your master's thing? Or what was your music?
Yeah, I did a master's in music, and then I did history and library science. So I'm a violinist. Do you play an instrument or?
Yeah. Piano.
Fantastic.
And I sing.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm about to learn harp. So.
Yay! That's so great. Well, that's fantastic. It looks like in the chat. Let's just pull that up 1 sec. Great, so we have someone in public policy PhD program, management, policy history. It's great. And then, yeah, some actually staff person helping with Women's Gender and Equity Center, which is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. That's me too.
Oh, great. Oh, great. Okay, so a couple. That's wonderful. Someone's online, one of your fellow. That's great. Yeah. So again, it's good to just think about why you might be working on a literature review. Some maybe you have coursework, or you're working towards a dissertation or a thesis. Sometimes it's just a standalone assignment, or just generally it's kind of the bedrock of working on a research project. It's really helpful to get a lay of the land to understand what research has already been done, and especially to figure out where you can contribute something original. So of course you want to gain an understanding of the research that others have done. You definitely want to analyze and synthesize some of those conversations. The idea is not to just summarize what's going on, but to really provide a critical analysis. And with that critical analysis, you're able to identify maybe what hasn't been discussed or identify gaps in the research. Maybe there's specific populations that haven't been studied. Maybe there's particular methodologies that haven't been explored. And that can then inform your own research project. You can also kind of get a sense of how the scholarship has changed over time. And ultimately, it just gives you credibility as a researcher. It shows that you are aware of the conversations happening in your field, and then you're able to make a better case for the relevance of your own research. Yeah, so in a nutshell, you want to discuss scholarship that's been previously done or is currently being done in the field, give a critique of that, and then also kind of evaluate where you fit in, how your research will contribute to that, or how it's unique, or how it makes an addition to that conversation. So again, this is a little bit, I don't know, it's so circular, right? So it's hard to put exact steps, but you're going to be doing all of these things, exploring topics, identifying a research question. You'll be looking in the literature, doing lots of searches, taking notes, lots of trying to organize and figure out what topics to focus on or what focus areas to really bring out. There's so much there. And then of course the writing process and the editing. And this is very cyclical. As you read the literature, as you start organizing and taking notes, you may go back and do some additional reading. That usually happens to me, and that's all part of the process. So I think it's really helpful to look at some examples. Now, literature reviews can be part of a larger whole. It can stand alone, like you can actually find review articles that are pretty much just a literature review of what's been said. But most often a literature review kind of sets out at the beginning of an article, and it sets up the research that is then discussed later on in the article. That's also true of a dissertation, although it's on a larger scale. Usually a dissertation will have an entire chapter devoted just to the literature review. So depending on what you're working on. And then of course, it can be assigned in classes and courses for grad students as a way to, it's a really good way to kind of have you get immersed in a topic and understand what researchers have discussed. This is an article example, and I know it's kind of small on the screen. Feel free to zoom in on your WebEx if you're viewing online. So of course, this comes from language studies generally. And pretty typical article, you know, you have your description, abstract at the beginning. And articles usually will have some sort of literature review. Sometimes it is titled a literature review, like there's a heading that says it. Other times it just kind of blends in. It might be introduction or background. Other times the author decides to do kind of subheadings broken down by kind of subtopic, and then talk about the literature in those subtopics, which is what this author has done. So they have a whole section on language brokering. You can see all the different scholars that are cited and the different in-text citations. That's always a heads up that there's some literature review going on. There's 3 lines of it, right? They're citing a lot of scholars here. We have another subject heading here, characteristics of language brokering, and contextual antecedents of language brokering, right? So they have a few different subheadings, but in each of these areas, they are sharing what other researchers have found, and they're kind of weaving in, kind of building up to their point, to their research by sharing what has been done in the past. Awesome. Welcome. Good to have you. It looks like we have an LLC scholar in the room, which is great. So now that's an article example. Let's also look at a dissertation. This is a slightly older one, about 5 years old, but I really like the way that it's laid out, situated. And so I like to give it as an example in this workshop. I'm gonna go ahead and download it actually, so we can look at it a little more in depth. So I'm just gonna save that. There we go. I'm going to share my screen, make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Hold on. And thanks for your patience. Oh no. Oops. And then reshare my screen, hopefully. That should just be my whole computer, hoping that pulls it up. Okay. So this is an example of a dissertation. This is someone who is getting a doctorate in curriculum and instruction, so master's of education, or sorry, PhD of education. Typically in a dissertation, you're going to have the introductory material, and then you're going to have a table of contents, right? It's a full-length book, essentially. And this gives a good example of, usually you will find an entire chapter dedicated to the literature review. That's a big part of your dissertation. And what I really like about this is they've organized it in such a way that it shows the different components of what their research is, kind of falls under a couple buckets. So they're looking at culturally responsive pedagogy. They have a whole section on that in their lit review. And then with that, they kind of break it down. So they have culture, language, learning, and teaching. They have challenges in enacting it. They have culturally responsible practices, etc. So that's something you can think about if you're working on a huge project, is what are the areas of research, not just one, but what are kind of the different buckets that you want to really look at to be able to flesh out your own research? What scholarship do you need to be aware of? And often it's multiple areas of scholarship, right? So if I come down here, skimming, sorry, let's come up. Here we go. Yeah, so this is the literature review chapter, and I do like, so it's very thorough. They're all the in-text citations, the references, and these subheadings do help kind of break it down and understand all the different areas that this scholar is bringing to their dissertation. And then of course, once you have identified that, the bibliography can be really helpful. If you're doing research and you're interested in seeing what scholars have done, it is always great to find a dissertation, because usually there's a really robust bibliography at the end of it. Yes, absolutely. So I can share the link. There's a question about the link. I can do that now, and then I also have, I will be sharing out my slides, and so there's a link there as well. Go ahead and reshare my slides. Sorry, let me share another page. Here we go. Okay, so this is the dissertation window. You can always grab a citation or a link. I'm just going to get the link and I'll put that in the chat for now. But there's also a link on my slides that you can access. Okay, I'm still not sharing my right screen, so let me try to fix this. Okay, let's see, WebEx. Okay, so back to my slides. And I think ultimately it comes down to the idea of having conversations. You're able to weave in the scholars, you know them well enough, you've taken notes on them, you kind of see how, what contributions each of them are making. And it ultimately ends up kind of becoming like this text, huge, massive conversation that you're reading about in these different articles, you're pulling out in dissertations, you're trying to figure out what the main point or contribution of each scholar is. And you're then weaving those conversations along in your own literature review narrative, if that makes sense. You're not just summarizing the different points, but you're trying to make sense of the conversation as a whole. And share that. So this is, I won't read all of this, but I do like this analogy. It's an older one by Kenneth Burke, but the idea that you come into a room, you're late, and so you're overhearing the conversation. People have been talking for a while. There's a big discussion, you know, as you listen for a while, then you're like, oh, I have something to contribute. You share your thoughts, but the hour grows late. You can't stay the whole time, and you end up leaving while others are continuing that conversation. And that's really how it is. You have this one period of time where you're entering the conversation with your own scholarship, with your own dissertation or thesis, and then knowing that the conversation will go on after that's done, right? After your article's published. So these are just some images that I like of different ways of thinking about a lit review. So you have, you know, a large thought bubble, and I like this because the lines are porous. All these different topics do have some overlap, right? You can kind of see how there might be a little bit of overlap there. You can also think of that as different buckets, right? You think of an article and what bucket does it go in? What subtopic does it go in? How does it fit? You can think about the different themes of the research you're looking at. This is a bad example, how not to write one. When it's all summary, and you just kind of give a list of what authors are saying. That is not a great way to write a literature review. What you're really wanting to do is provide that synthesis, think about themes that are coming out, think about some of the bigger implications, and provide that evaluation yourself. And that's really what you want to focus on for the lit review. Now, that's not possible until you've done a lot of the reading and the note taking. So this will start to emerge as you are in the process of your lit review. This is not going to be something you know at the beginning by any means. When you've chosen a topic, that's great. And then it's really digging into the readings and the literature and kind of thinking through it. I will also say this is why, be careful. There are some AI products and things that talk about literature review assistance, and some can perhaps be helpful, but what comes of you reading these articles and thinking about them is your own original synthesis and evaluation. And that is something that machine learning at this point can't quite do on the same level. So, and that's also ultimately what you want, because you want to be someone who's able to really know the scholarship inside and out, because it's going to make your own original research stronger. So some things can save time, but the actual reading and digesting and putting together your thoughts, there's no shortcut for that. Yeah, any questions so far? No question about the dissertation link that's in the chat. Anything come to mind? Not putting you on the spot ever, but if ever you wanted to chime in.
It just seems a little overwhelming because like
Yeah.
I have 2 weeks to put together my next literature review for like a paper.
So
And
yeah, this is not a good example. This is like, sorry, that can be very overwhelming.
is this more like if you're doing your own research, like you're about to publish a paper kind of thing?
Yes. So what I've focused on right now, yeah, and I would say the focus of this is more for like thesis dissertation so far.
Okay, sure.
So for like an assignment, it's just on a miniature scale. You're not able to dive in to all the literature on that in that case. So what you want to do is do a search, and kind of you have a time limit, right? So you have a certain amount of hours you can spend searching. You just do your due diligence the best you can, just put together a nice reference list. And then you're going to skim through and read the articles and think about the themes. And in a miniature version, put together however long you need for that literature review. Yeah. So if you're sitting with a topic for months, or in the case of a dissertation, a couple years, it's going to be a very different project than something that's due in a couple weeks. Sure. And your professor knows that. Yeah, so no worries. I should have made that clearer. I'm sorry. So again, let's talk a little bit about the steps, some organizing tools, and then we can also search for some literature if that's helpful since we're at the library. So yeah, you want to think about what your working topic is. Maybe that's been assigned. If you're working on a bigger project, this can be something you talk about with your mentor. Then you'll want to search for sources on that topic. That could be library searches, online searches. You're trying to find articles or books, ebooks, etc. With that, you want to analyze and take notes as you're reading. Again, you're just trying to figure out big themes, broad brush themes. What are scholars talking about generally? And there's different ways to take notes, right? As you're reading, you can just write a couple sentences of the main idea. What's the main point? Sometimes I find it helpful to even set a timer. I'm a big believer in the Pomodoro technique, where you like have a little timer for 40 minutes, you do some reading, you step away, you come back and just summarize it in 2 sentences. So again, the idea is that you're able to synthesize and put it in your own words. You do not need all the detail. That's too much, right? You're just trying to get the main ideas as much as you can. Some people also like doing tables where they're like identifying, the basic citation info, who the author is, etc. Some of the key points, if there's any relationships or other themes. Some people like to make note of the significance to you, So they can be as detailed as you want, but depending on your project, it doesn't have to be. It can be just a couple sentences that you sum up the main thing. Some people like doing handwritten notes, right? Stickies can be fun. If you're reading an article and you want to do some color coding, you can just make a couple notes about big themes and then stick it on the wall, and then you can kind of play around and figure out relationships. So that's a kind of hands-on version. I tend to just get a piece of paper out. I'm kind of analog, and step away from my computer and just kind of think about the authors and what themes, and kind of like a little Venn diagram, like who fits where, what are some overlapping themes. Whatever helps you kind of think through what you read. There's no right or wrong for this. These are just ideas. Anything to kind of help you put the readings into your own words and try to think through what the authors are saying. And then of course the writing process. It's helpful to have an outline and identify what are some of the themes I'm going to talk about in my lit review, just so you're not starting out. I always think it's helpful to have some bullet points of how you're going to organize your lit review. And it's going to be different depending on how big of a project it is. If it's a full chapter, 20 pages or so, that's going to be organized very differently than a shorter assignment. So yeah, and then just in the writing process, again, it's that idea of trying to provide some themes that you're focused on or some evaluation. It's not just a summary of what the author said. You're really trying to parse out what are the big areas of discussion in the literature? What am I seeing as I step back? Yeah, because you've done the reading, right? So you can share kind of what you learned more broadly. That's the goal. Also, just to note, there is a database we have that called Sage Campus. Sage does a lot of like social science type support, but this database does have e-courses on different subjects. So if you're really wondering, especially if you're doing a really big project, you have a lot of time, there is, you can search for literature review. And there's an e-course here. It's 5 hours and there's videos, there's readings, but it kind of talks you through the literature review process. If you have like a more technical literature review, sometimes they're called like systematic reviews or evidence synthesis. That's a little more detailed. There's some stricter parameters there. You would know if you had this. Your professor would say something about it. There's an e-course on that too. So just to know, there's some additional resources outside of this workshop that are helpful. Some different organizing tools. Honestly, I am a big fan of pencil and paper and just trying to map it out. What are the different connections? We're using Post-it notes. There are some apps like Evernote can be helpful. There's like a lot of these apps have a premium version that you pay for, and then kind of a trial version that's free. Some people, if it's a big project management can just help you like stay on track if it's the course of several months or so. Not as helpful for smaller assignments. And then something to consider are citation management tools. I don't know if you've heard of programs like Zotero or EndNote or RefWorks, things like that. A lot of these are subscription or you pay for them. Some have some free versions. My favorite is Zotero. I think it's free version. I've actually never had to upgrade. I've been really happy with the free version. And these softwares help you organize your readings, put them in different folders, but then it also gives you the citation easily extractable. So you can quickly generate a bibliography without having to hand type it. So there are workshops in the library about these tools. You can view recordings. I did the Zotero one last week, and there's a recording of it up on our YouTube channel. So, or you can contact me and make an appointment, and we can talk through any of these. My colleague, Katie Sullivan, provides the EndNote online workshop, and I think that's coming up. I'll look at that and see. I think that one is coming up in a couple weeks. Yeah, March 2nd. Or feel free to, contact me or Katie off list. Yeah, any questions about tools, or even better, does anyone have a tool that's been helpful for them? You can suggest, or anything that you want to share with anyone on the workshop here. That's one of the best things about grad school or school in general, is just asking others what they use. Yeah, so I guess one of the things, oh yes, thank you. Fantastic. So Elizabeth is sharing that, yes, very good. Elizabeth is sharing, I keep my articles and citations organized in a Google Sheet, which is brilliant, because then you just have that one that you can pop open and then see the different articles and citations. That's excellent. That's a great way to do it. I know I often will use Google folders also, so I have the full text, I have the PDF of what I'm looking at, easily accessible. So I have like a big folder for the project, and then I have a series of subfolders that can work. Yeah, lots of ideas. Oh, excellent. Yeah, this is great. Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to unmute and share. I can also read out your comment. It's a good comment. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, did you want me to unmute and share?
Yes, please. That would be fantastic.
Oh, okay. I was just saying that in Google Sheets, they have this table function, and it's really, really helpful because you can like sort and filter by the different columns in the table. And you can also use like drop downs to organize, like I organized by the different topics of the articles, whether they were more method focused or theory focused. And then you can also add the files. So you can add a little, like, I forget what it's called, but that you can click on the file from the sheet and then open up the actual article.
Oh, that's great. I haven't thought to do that. That's brilliant. So that's a super helpful suggestion. There's also, as you were talking about drop downs, like the Google Smart, if you're using Google products, the smart chips allow you to like set, it's pretty easy once you've kind of established using a smart chip for a different category. You can do like in progress or completed, or you can kind of make a little note for yourself. It's great. It's great. Thank you, Elizabeth. And then, yes, awesome. Okay, so there's a Zotero fan in the chat. Someone saying that they started using it last summer, and it's been very helpful. So yeah, I am also on the Zotero fan club. So that's great.
Yeah, I would just add that with Zotero you can basically upload all the metadata from some of those documents, and it will just populate it, within the platform, and you can add notes. You can add the file itself, or link to the file itself, and you can organize all that data in categories, so that you can search it in different ways if you like. So yeah, it's been like a game changer as far as like oh, and I think you can also generate automatic citations with it. So it's a really great tool.
Yes, I love it when someone else puts a plug and I don't need to. So I 100% agree. I think that tagging feature is great. You can link articles that way. And then yes, once you have uploaded your citations, it's pretty easy to do that. But then you can easily export them out as a bibliography, as a reference file, as footnotes, etc. It is able to handle so many different types of citation styles, definitely the main ones, but then several I have never used before. So there's a big menu of citation styles you can use with Zotero. Thank you, that's great. Yeah, this is awesome. It's great to get ideas from everyone. Definitely ask if you're in a class. It's always great to learn what other people are doing. Yeah, if it's helpful, the next little part here, we're going to talk about ways to find the literature. So again, you don't have to do all of these. These are just some suggestions, but the main search on the IOK website is a great place to start. You can also do specific, this is more for a bigger project, but you can look specifically for like journals. If you have the name of a journal you want to look at, you can do in like subject specific databases. You can look at the research guides. There's also interlibrary loan and there's dissertations and theses. So again, don't be overwhelmed. You don't have to do all these, but depending on the scope of your project and how long you have to work on it, here's some ideas. So the one search is probably the go-to place. So that's kind of what you look at if you log into the library homepage. You have the one search, right? So you can newly redesigned. So I'm getting used to it. But the search here, you can put in your topic. And then what I recommend always doing is signing in. This will give you access to the full text, to request the full text if you don't have it, and also to, to be able to make requests from other libraries. So it's really helpful. Go ahead and the way you can tell you have signed in is your name will show up on the top right. So that's a way to make sure you've signed in. If you haven't yet signed in, it will just say sign in, and then you can click on it and do that. Just the one search, you're going to get a lot of results. I have 74,000 basically. That can be overwhelming, right? So there's lots of ways to narrow it down. You can then, probably one of the best ways is to think about how to really narrow your own topic in the search itself. So if I'm really interested in urban gardening and in Baltimore or inner city youth, right? There's ways I can add those terms, right? So as I add terms, my search is going to diminish. So I went from 74,000 to about 1,300. And if my topic was really on working with inner city youth and programs for urban spaces, this would be good. You can then search and limit by other ways. You can obviously limit just by peer-reviewed journals. You could limit just by publication date, right? There's lots of ways to narrow down using the library tools. You could also think about what types of sources you want. So the mix, the one search is going to do a mix. It's going to have articles, books and ebooks. Oh, I did peer reviewed, so let me take that out. Peer reviewed will just bring up articles. But if I have that off, a lot of articles here, potentially there may be some books or ebooks on the topic that will show up. So you can kind of scroll through there. Just know that there's a couple ways to save the articles. You can always look at these options here, the citation feature. If you're using Zotero or a plugin, you can obviously use the citation once you've clicked on it. The plugin will scrape a lot of the data and create a citation for you, which is great. You can grab the citation or the permanent link. So if you're doing library searching, you don't want to use the link on top, that will break. Permanent link, on the other hand, will allow you to save directly back to the source through the paywall. So that I recommend doing. And then the thumbtack, you can always save the source itself. It will go to your file system. You can then make a label for it. You can save a whole search. You can see your search history from the day. I just searched for that. So you can kind of see, that's again the little thumbtack icon on the top. Okay. Yep, so a slide to remember to sign in. We've talked a little bit about ways of refining your search. If you just want online items, you can do that. If you just want peer reviewed, there's lots of ways of narrowing your search down. There's an option to expand your results beyond USMAI. What does that mean? USMAI stands for the University System of Maryland and affiliated institutions. So if you want to, the default is going to search UMBC, and it's going to also include physical items from College Park, Bowie, Towson, any of those other USM schools in Maryland. But if you want to look beyond that, this would be especially helpful if you're doing a dissertation. So not as helpful if you have a smaller project. But if you really want to see what in the world there is written about this topic, expand beyond USMAI. That's going to broaden your search. So instead of 74,000, it doubled it. More than doubled it, right? But you're going to get items from other libraries around the world. It's the broadest search we have. So how might you get those items? This is no online access. This is bringing up books from other places. You can make an interlibrary loan request. And if you've never done that before, again, you can ignore this. You don't have to do it. This is kind of extra. But if you're involved in a big project, you probably want to have an account. It's pretty easy because it will pull in all the information, the author, the publisher, etc. You can submit your request. The first time you do it, you'll have a profile page that will pop up, and it will ask for your information. It'll ask for your UMBC email address and your phone just to contact. It will also ask for your ID number. This is actually not the ID that you probably have memorized. That's like a 10-digit number, an 8-digit number. But you can find this number. It's actually your library number. It is on your card, your Retriever ID card that you get as your student ID. And then on the bottom right, there is a little barcode, and the 14 digits are above that. So just know the first time you set up an account, it will ask for that number. Who knew, right? That's the only time you'll ever use that library number to set up an account. But once you have an account, it's pretty easy. You can kind of link in the request that way through the OneSearch, or you can just create a new request. Online articles, PDFs will come really quickly, about a day or so. Physical items will need to be shipped by mail, so they can take longer, like a physical book. The physical books will take a while. Articles and book chapters are pretty quick turnaround. Yeah, there's a question. Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, just to be clarified, most interlibrary loan, if it's an article or a book chapter, it will be digital. You'll get a PDF copy. But if you do need a physical book, it will be shipped in the mail. Yeah, you can check it out at our checkout desk downstairs in the library. Thanks for the question. So we've talked a little bit about saving your sources as you're doing a OneSearch. There's the permalink option, the citation, you can email it. There's also the favorites pin we discussed briefly, so you can explore those options to save. And honestly, I just recommend downloading the PDF. This is why you have those Google folders, right? Or you can link to the article, like Elizabeth was saying. That's a brilliant way to do that in a Google Sheet. So thanks for that suggestion as well. Okay, not everyone needs to know this, so you can ignore it. But if you're looking for specific journals, if you have a name of a journal that your professor wants you to look through, or you have identified as being one of the main journals in your area of study, you can search the journal search, and you would search by title. So there's a screenshot of that. You can also search by topic, but it's better if you have the name of a journal title. So this again isn't for everyone. You can also search different databases. So the OneSearch encompasses most of our databases. We actually have over 400 different databases. And if you want to see the breakdown of that and kind of do individual or more targeted searching, this can come up in a lit review where you say that I searched these specific databases and you name them. That would be for a more comprehensive search. That wouldn't be for a typical literature review. But you could say, I'm just going to search in ERIC, which is a big education journal. And you could just go to that one database and search within that one database for your topic. So again, this would be a lot fewer results. I have to kind of change, but it would just be the results within this one database. So that would be kind of a more narrow way to search. I mentioned interlibrary loan. That's a good resource, especially if you want to do the broadest search possible. Some may be wondering, how do I know what databases to use? I recommend just taking a look at the research guide for your area of study. So for example, if you're studying social work, there is a research guide for that. You would just go to the social work page, open it up, and then under find articles, these are the main social work databases. There's Social Index, there's PsycInfo. You could just click into one of these and just do a search in that one database. So that's always an option too. And that's true for any, you do public policy here. And again, just look at the main article databases. Yeah, click into just one of those. I would only recommend this really if you're working on a dissertation, but if you want to see other examples of dissertations or even check out other UMBC students who worked on dissertations, you can see those on these two links. You would again click into the database and you can do a search on your topic there. Food deserts and urban areas. So I'll have a lot. Yeah, 130, that's right. So I might want to think about narrowing that topic a bit. But you can kind of see different dissertations. You can limit by date. So that's our dissertation database. The UMBC one looks very similar, but again, it's only limited to UMBC students. And so it's a mini database, I guess. Mini, M-I-N-I, of just the UMBC dissertations. So we're kind of we're at the end of the workshop. We've covered a lot of ground. Thanks for bearing with the workshop, 45 minutes. If there's any questions, I would love to take any questions. And I can just share quickly how to get some assistance too. So while you're thinking of questions, feel free to put them in. I do want to mention, there's lots of ways to get support. So there's the online chat. If you are on the website, there's this little chat bot that kind of follows you around. It's a real person. It's not AI yet. And my colleague's in there right now. So if you had a question, you can just type it in. This can be really anything. If a link's broken or you're having trouble finding articles on a specific topic, if you want to kind of help brainstorming keywords to use or search terms to use or ways to limit, we're happy to do that as well. The sky's the limit. You can also make a research appointment. You can ask at the desk. So again, those are the link to the subject librarians. You can make one with me. You're in this workshop, but then you can also make one with your specific subject area. And you can always just ask if you're in person. We are happy to answer questions. Just go up to that main checkout desk and ask. There are some upcoming library events and workshops. Just know that there's some coming down this week. Skills for grad students. There's a STEM literature review. There's how to use EndNote. So you can kind of think future events. And if you're willing, let me put this in the chat to maybe just share if there's anything that you took away from today. always helpful for us to kind of get a sense of that, or if you have a comment or something you wish we covered, you can definitely write that in the Google form. That works, maybe? Is that? Oh, I did that wrong. Let me try to get to the proper link in the chat. I think that should work. So, but I'm also open to any questions, either in the chat or unmute or just share. And yeah, my email I'll also put in the, feel free to reach out. I'll be sharing the recording. I'll be sharing the slides later this week. And my email's in the chat as well. And on the screen. I will go ahead and stop the recording, but if anyone wants to ask anything while that is stopped, feel free. Let me, WebEx is a bit of a maze. Here we go. So again, signing out on the recording, and then I'll hang out after if there's any questions.